Sons of the Forest, the sequel to the 2014 survival horror game The Forest, and it is full of danger and mystery, and it can be tough to know where to start when it comes to staying alive on Sons of the Forest. Fortunately, I have actually been through this process many times now, and I'm able to share with you guys 12 tips for beginners in Sons of the Forest. These 12 tips are going to help you dominate the game, and these tips really vary. Some of these tips are some general survival tips, whilst others are actually going to possibly save you quite a lot of time or even save your life, so I would definitely make sure that you take all of these on board. Of course, some of these you might know, but I am certain that there are definitely going to be some tips here that you won't know yet, and this is going to be 12 tips to help you dominate Sons of the Forest. Let's waste no more time and let's get straight into the video. The first one is to use the quick inventory system. Pressing your inventory key will give you access to your entire inventory in your backpack. However, holding the button grants you easy access to your backpack full of your essential goodies. So if you're building a structure requiring a skull, for example, you can place the skull by holding your inventory key and selecting the skull rather than opening your inventory. The shortcut will actually save you quite a significant amount of time in the survival game. And believe me when I say there's been many times when I just need one item and I just go through my entire inventory looking for it, when you can just use these shortcuts and be able to find it in a much quicker amount of time. Something definitely worth noting, and trust me when I say this will save you a lot of time. Next up is to use traps to secure your base. The longer you survive in Sons of the Forest, the more aggressive you'll find surface cannibals and mutants. In addition to reinforcing your base with defensive fencing, you'll also want to try to set fly swatter traps and bone traps around the area, but try obviously not to accidentally go on them yourself, since that's, well, it's not going to end well. You're going to take quite a lot of damage, so definitely make sure not to do that, but they are definitely worth putting around your base in certain areas, since yeah, as you progress through the game, particularly in the multiplayer mode, you're going to find the game gets progressively harder, so make sure that you're keeping up to date with your base, making sure the traps are all around it to be able to protect your entire area. So the third tip is to make your way to GPS landmarks by using your phone within Sons of the Forest. Although Sons of the Forest does have a linear progression pattern, heading to these locations marked on your GPS will also guide you to caverns and landmarks that will be helpful in your progression. However, once you do wander throughout Sons of the Forest, you want to ensure that you do have proper armor and weapons to ensure you won't fall victim to cannibals and mutants along the way. As particularly in the forest, you're going to find yourself, coming across a lot of people that aren't very friendly at all. So make sure that you do have weapons when you enter these areas, and also make sure you've got some food to be able to, and some medicine to be able to help heal yourself if you do take some damage, since there's a good chance you will take some damage if you go out exploring a lot of the area. Make sure that you definitely are prepared before doing this. Don't just go out when you're weak, you have no strength or anything like that. Make sure you're fully prepared, but also don't bring absolutely everything with you, since you don't want to lose loads of stuff or anything like that. Just make sure that you are definitely prepared before you go exploring. So yeah, make your way to GPS landmarks was the third tip. So the fourth is to make sure that you utilize your companion, Kelvin. Kelvin can perform various time-saving tasks, so be sure you're constantly using him to your advantage. He can collect logs, sticks, rocks, and even some fish, saving you time on some of the more menial aspects of the game. However, if you must save your game and return to it, note that you'll need to also give Kelvin new tasks, as he won't immediately continue where he left off. This is something you might expect, but definitely make sure that you do that. I would definitely use Kelvin a lot. He's definitely going to help you. For example, I was building my base and I went and got him to get some logs from the nearby area, since that did help save a lot of time. However, you do want to make sure that obviously he's only going to be able to get stuff that's very nearby. So for example, if you're on the shore and you wanted to get logs, that's not going to be very doable, since he's not always going to venture right into the forest, since it might be quite far away. So just make sure that you do sort of, put that into perspective when you are going to be using him, since he's not going to be able to get absolutely everything. But either way, he's definitely going to be able to help out, whether it's getting a bit of food, some sticks or anything like that. All of those materials will definitely help you at some point, and you can never have too many of them, especially with the logs. You'll be getting through loads of those. So yeah, definitely make sure you utilize Kelvin. He'll save you so much time. Next up is to prepare for the winter. If you do survive long enough in Sons of the Forest, you will eventually face the winter. During the winter, you'll find there are fewer enemies in your surroundings, as they struggle to stay warm as well as you. Now, you'll also find bodies of water are actually frozen, so there are going to be far fewer animals to kill for food, and your endurance is much more limited unless you have a fire nearby or have proper gear to survive the winter. And you want to make sure you prepare for this by getting some dry meat, fish, and even some limbs and putting them on your drying rack, and you can actually have multiple drying racks to be able to get a massive stock of this. I would definitely make sure you do this, and also make sure that you've got some energy drinks to be able to get you through this winter. Seasons will only last a few days within the game, so you can make it through the winter pretty easily, providing you do have just a couple of resources. You're not going to need that much food or water to be able to get through a couple days, but definitely make sure you do have some, since the winter's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be very hard to go hunting during that time. Let's say you get through your current supply of food just before the winter arrives, you're going to really struggle to find enough food. So make sure that you do have enough before you do get into the winter. Definitely make sure, yeah, that is something you look out for. So, we are halfway there and we are on to tip number 6. And tip number 6 is to use throwables and your explosives wisely. Throughout Sons of the Forest, you'll find things like grenades, flares, and materials to make things such as molotovs and explosives within the game. These will of course be very, very powerful when you are attacking enemies of hordes, but you'll want to use them wisely because your resources are always going to be very limited. Typically, they're useful in attacking several groups of enemies at once, or in a location where enemies can't simply just run away from you, such as when you are of course underground. So make sure that you use these wisely and not just throwing them about to test them out or anything like that, since you're really not going to get many of these throughout your entire playthrough. So definitely make the most of these, since yeah, they're pretty rare, they're going to be hard to, find a lot, and you're never going to have a massive supply of them. So make sure that you utilize these as best you can, and don't just, throw them away for no reason. Make sure that you really do utilize these. Tip number 7 is to aim for headshots. When you are using a spear, you can aim to hit your enemies actually in the head, which will often stagger them and knock them backwards onto the ground, where you can then finish what you started before chopping off their limbs for food and throwing their bodies in the fire for bones. This is what I would say a pretty useful combat tip. I would definitely make sure that you are aiming for those headshots, just like any game really, but definitely make sure you're doing it, since this could, save your life. Definitely make sure you do that. But also on the combat side of things, learn enemies' attack patterns. Enemies have specific attack patterns within Sons of the Forest, allowing you to dodge and damage them at specific intervals. So learning these patterns can help you better survive your encounters with them. So study how they move to know when to attack and when to block. This will make things a lot easier, save you a lot of time, and yeah, just make combat a lot easier in general. Tip number 8 is to make sure that you are sneaky. In Sons of the Forest, you can sneak and hide from cannibals and mutants. These are very helpful, as some mutants don't appear to be able to hear that well, but know where they are based on your sound. Further, you can also sneak to attack deer, which you'll need to do to make leather armor. And finally, it's sometimes better to avoid cannibals and mutants rather than take them head on, especially if you are weak. So sneaking around the campsites can be a way to amass resources near them without risking your health in any way whatsoever. But do note that some cannibals are actually scared of you, so that's something worth noting, since it might always not be, needed, but definitely make sure that you are utilizing the sneaking mechanic within the game, since you'll probably want to use it a lot to be able to, save your life. Next up is to make sure you're using your tarp to save your game. You are going to have times where you might die within the game. I'd say that's pretty much guaranteed, and within the wilderness, you can actually use tarp to be able to quickly save your game. All you need is a stick and a piece of tarp, and this will set up a small shelter. Within this, you can of course sleep, which will obviously take it to night or day depending on where you're at, and of course, it will reset your entire, your tiredness. You will no longer feel tired once you use it, but you can also save your game, which is probably the more important part. So obviously you can save your game, and then if you die, then you'll go back to that save point. Something really useful, and it's a really easy way to save your game. All you need is a bit of tarp and one stick. Simple and easy, an easy way to save your game, and there's no reason not to do it, to be honest, at all. So, the next tip is to holster your weapon. You will actually move faster when you holster your weapon, allowing you to actually outrun some of the cannibals and mutants that you will encounter within the forest. So make sure that you definitely holster your weapon at times. Of course, if you're in combat, then don't at all do that, but you're going to want to do it at points, especially maybe if you're just gathering a few easy resources. Make sure you're holstering that weapon, since it's obviously going to, well, speed things up a little, saving you a bit of time in the long run. So, now we are on to the 12th and final tip of the game, and this is that you can regenerate health. Health regenerates as you eat, so if you have low health and are running low on medicine and health mixes but are in a relatively safe location, try slowly replenishing your health with food instead. That said, if you do want to obviously make this a lot faster, then medicine is obviously the way to go, but over time your health will slowly regenerate, providing that you are eating well and aren't hungry at all. So make sure that you eat well when you are low on health, as this can help you to regenerate that health if you don't have any medicine on you at the time. So yeah, something worth noting there. And there we go. Those are 12 tips to help you dominate Sons of the Forest, and that will just about wrap up things here. We've gone over 12 tips. These really vary. Some of these are general survival tips, while some of these are actually some combat tips, and yeah, that does just about wrap up things here. Now, I have done a video a bit like this, but instead it's a complete beginner's guide to the game, and if you're interested in watching that, then a link to that video is on the screen now, and you can go ahead and join me over there.